That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, on Monday, we talked about Alabama's offense against Georgia's defense. Now it's time to talk about Alabama's defense against Georgia's offense. Uh, Obviously, Georgia's having some success offensively when you talk about that Tennessee game, going on the road, turning it into a shootout. They can run the football, they can throw the football. What have been some of your initial impressions of Georgia offense as Saturday draws closer?
I think they have, some playmaking dudes that maybe they've been a little short on in the past. They're not a juggernaut offensively, but they do make you defend a lot. And I think that's what makes them difficult to go up against, right? Gunner Stockton, he can throw it. That throw he made to Humphrey at the end of the Tennessee game was just ridiculous. I mean, again, 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL all said "wow" at that throw. So he can throw it. He can also run it. And then their offense as a whole with Nate Frazier, particularly at running back, they can run it. And then they have the weapons outside and Zachariah Branch, Colby Young. But, they'll even hurt you at tight end. I mean, Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky are fantastic tight ends. So they make you defend all of it. I think if there's, I hate to use the word weakness because they don't really have one, but the weakest link probably is the offensive line. I don't think this Georgia offensive line is vintage dog offensive line. I think Alabama can score some wins there. If you can beat them in the trenches, that is significant. But Alabama has to play their best defensive game of the year. I know that they kind of, shut out, Monroe and 7 points that they only gave up to Wisconsin. And those were great efforts. But just in terms of who you're playing here is so different. Alabama's defense, particularly the front, has to play well because if you're going to get wins, it's against the offensive line. So it's really incumbent upon the front six, as I'll call it at Alabama, and their 3-3-5 or 4-2-5, however you want to call it. But, they got to win up front because if you don't, you'll have a long day because Georgia will make you defend horizontally and vertically the entire football field.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing about Georgia's offense. A lot of 12 personnel, a lot of two tight end sets. I would say probably about half the time. I mean, it's Lawson Lucky and Oscar Delp, and they're both good tight ends. But I think one of the differences is, from this offense compared to previous years, is they have some complementary wide receivers, and they got some different body types. Colby Young, Noah Thomas, they're bigger body guys, kind of those X receivers. You still got Dylan Bell, who's kind of that Z. London Humphreys. Obviously, he's going to be a move guy. And then you've got guys like Zachariah Branch there in the slot, who's got a lot of speed and athleticism. Still think they're figuring out exactly how they want to use him, but he's a dynamic player with the football in his hands. So Alabama's definitely got, as Kane Womack has said multiple times, you've got to be able to tackle in space. You've got to be able to rally to the football, and you've got to have this aggressive attacking mentality that I really feel like Alabama has had the last two games. And that's something I was watching the defense yesterday and just diving in, preparing for this as much as I could. And a couple of things stood out. Number one, I think that Keon Sabb is playing good football next to Bray Hubbard. Like, because Bray is more of the guy that everybody focused on as far as the loafing and stuff in the first game, and he got a lot of the criticism. I think the way that he has bounced back and what he's put on tape has really highlighted, or earned praise from us. But Keon Sabb, granted, he had some loafing moments against Florida State too, but he's also been kind of a headhunter the last couple of weeks. That's something that stood out to me for sure. We probably are not giving him enough credit. I know the people want to focus on the interceptions, and Bray had two of them, but he's been kind of setting the tone, or helping set the tone as far as the back end of Alabama's defense. But also, I think that Quay Russaw is playing good football right now, and we'll talk more about his usage here in just a few minutes. But I think LT Overton, the fact that he finished against Wisconsin, you want to see that consistency continue to develop. But he's playing really good football as far as continuing to be disruptive. You're potentially getting Tim Keenan back, or we're expecting Tim Keenan back. It's just a matter of how healthy is he? How much of a workload will he get? That's TBD. But Like there's a lot of factors here. There's a lot of things that favor Georgia, but we also can't forget like Alabama has dealt with the crowd the last 2 weeks on defense. Like the offense hasn't, but when the opposing offense is out there, crowd's supposed to get loud. That makes it tough for your defense as far as their communication. And that's something that, even against Wisconsin, there were times where I feel like Kane Womack's probably getting in the calls a little bit too late, and there's still communication going on at the snap of the football, hopefully being in more of an environment away from Bryant Denny where it's not cheering while you're on the field. Maybe that could potentially help.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt. Georgia offensively has been, their own fans are very critical of they're very critical of Mike Bobo, and they're critical of the offense. But when you look at their numbers, their overall numbers, the dudes they're putting on the field, and the way that they do challenge you with the run and the pass, I don't really get so much as criticism, because I look at their offense as one that's very difficult to defend because they make you defend all of it. But the crowd is a huge factor when Alabama has the ball, less of a factor when Georgia has the ball. What's gonna really affect Alabama's defense on Saturday again is having to defend all of it. But I'll ask you, Clint, because I think I kind of asked this about their defense, but I'll ask about the offense too. I think we build Georgia up to be this thing because they won the national championship in 2021. They were a completely dominant program in 2022. Made it to the SEC championship in 23. Would have gone to the playoff again had Milroe and Saban not showed up and done a Milroe and Saban thing and knocked them out. 24 last year, they were the SEC champions. They won the toughest conference in the sport again. We build them up to be this thing, right? I look at their offense the same way I look at their defense. I'm worried for Alabama having to defend this because they have so many good players, and again, they force you to defend everything. But if I had to bet my life on a player from Georgia's offense being taken in the first round, I'm not sure who I would pick, and my whole life depends on it. I mean, Zachariah Branch, a first-round pick? Maybe. Delp? Maybe. It's hard to say that one of their starting offensive linemen is headed to the first round. Not Gunner Stockton, I don't think. You can't rule out any of it. But I'm just saying that in the past, 2021, 2022, previous Georgia teams in the teens even, they had a handful of guys that you're like, wow, they're going to make a ton of money at the next level. And they do have a lot of NFL guys. I'm just saying they've just sort of backed up to me in terms of that. Now, I'm sure some Georgia fan could be hate listening to the show and saying, well, wouldn't you say the same thing about Alabama? Maybe so. That is a good point. Maybe so. The field will still be littered with NFL talent. But the first round alpha dog dudes, I don't really see them in Athens. And not that I'm saying that Alabama's full of them either. I'm just saying that changes my perception of Georgia a little bit. I just see Georgia as very, very good, but not unbeatable in that sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something that I hadn't really thought about. And you talk about the offensive line; they've had some really good offensive linemen in recent years. I think the unit overall has kind of struggled the last couple, but they've had some dudes. Now, Ernest Green, he is their starting right tackle, or supposed to be. He's been dealing with a back injury, has not been 100%. They've been trying to figure that out. Michael Uni, he was kind of brought in. He's kind of a guard tackle, versatile piece along their offensive line. At right tackle, he really struggled against Tennessee. Really, he struggled to some degree against Austin Peay the week before. I think in the last 2 games, he's allowed a total of 6 pressures. Against Tennessee, he allowed 4 pressures and only 16 pass blocking snaps. So that's 25% of the times you're taking a pass set, you're giving up a pressure. That's not good. And so late against Tennessee, because Ernest Green is not 100% healthy, he did start that game, but he's still, dealing with the back issue. They brought in Bo Hewley, who I think did stabilize the right side a little bit. Now, granted, will that continue? First of all, 2 weeks removed from that Tennessee game, maybe Ernest Green is a lot closer to being 100% and can perform sustain a little bit better. That's something that we got to be able to look at. You talk about Juan Gaston, who has been their starting right guard. He suffered an ankle injury against Marshall, didn't start against Tennessee, but he missed the Austin Peay game, played, roughly about 30, 35 snaps against Tennessee, and I thought he really struggled as well. But once again, 2 weeks removed or 2 weeks further along as far as the recovery, maybe he's back to playing closer to where he was at. So, their offensive line, the right side, has been kind of an issue. And when you talk about Alabama's two edges, LT Overton, Quay Russaw, maybe you throw in a Yanze Pierre as well, I think they're getting pretty good production as far as their those guys being disruptive. Maybe not the sack numbers, at least not, obviously against Wisconsin, they have plenty of success. Russaw had a sack, Overton, Yanze. But I do think that is an area where Alabama might have an advantage. Maybe Monroe Freely at left tackle, he's done pretty well. Really, their entire left side, including center, they've been pretty good. Their right
Center's
side
good.
is a question mark right now, though.
Yeah, and I talked about it on the Monday show about the mirror image. Alabama's right side has been a struggle, and neither team getting a lot of sacks. But one advantage, and you just brought it up, and I think it's big here, is Alabama has done a good job of pressuring the quarterback. I think Alabama's win rate up front is very good, and their pressures. I think Alabama's near the top of the country, in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. Now, do they sack the quarterback? They don't, or they haven't enough. They did against Wisconsin. I think it may continue against Georgia. It's the matchup that I see them winning, and they've done a good job there. I think this could be a win for Alabama, getting pressure on Stockton. Will they get him to the ground a lot? I don't know. Athletic kid, smart kid, good leader. I wouldn't put an over-under sack total at over 3, but even 3 sacks would be a big deal. But what would really benefit Alabama in terms of helping Alabama win this game isn't so much how many times they sack Gunner Stockton. It's how many times they force Georgia out of what they want to do. I mean, that's the thing about a pressure. I mean, a pressure means that Georgia had a plan on a play and it didn't work because Alabama got too much heat on the quarterback and they had to abandon plan A, whatever that was, and move on. You've sort of done a lot of your job as a defense at that point when you've gotten them to abandon the initial play and do something else. I do think Alabama's going to have a lot of success there, and a lot of people might be surprised at that because Alabama's defensive front gets criticized oftentimes by Alabama fans, but it's actually fairly good. It's fairly good at getting the heat to the quarterback. You hope you can finish it off. That's a tall order against a crafty, athletic quarterback like Gunner, but I do think Alabama will get some wins there, and if you can get some wins up front, maybe you get big wins on the back end with some ill-advised throws. That doesn't really seem like Gunner Stockton's MO, but the pressure and the heat, that can change that, and that's what causes turnovers.
Yeah, the main thing to me is earn the right to get after Gunner Stockton as often as you can. Like, Georgia's running the football pretty well right now. They got a stable of running backs. And, as far as staying on schedule, I think they're doing a pretty good job of that. And, of course, that's going to allow you to keep the playbook open, from letting LT Overton loose, cutting Quay Russaw loose. Like, it's difficult when it's 2nd and 5. You don't really know what they're doing. If it's 2nd and 11 or 2nd and 12, it's like, okay, they could run the football and try to make this a more manageable 3rd down. And sometimes you can sell out for that. Now you've put them in a 3rd and long, and now you get to pin your ears back. But then sometimes based off of tendencies of the offense and stuff, you're like, okay, anytime they get behind the sticks early, they start trying to throw their way out of it almost immediately. Things like that you can really start to tee off on, give yourself some opportunities. One of the problems that I know a lot of Alabama fans have right now is the fact that Quay Russaw is not getting the opportunities, the consistent enough opportunities to get after the quarterback. A lot of dropping in coverage. And, that's understandable frustration because I think Russaw right now, if you want to consider LT Overton an edge, because, he is mostly playing on the edge, I view him as I label him as a defensive lineman. So I don't put him in that category, even though he does play a lot on. I mean, that's primarily where he plays. So technically, I'm wrong, but he goes. I call the Wolves the edges. Is kind of the easy way that I. So
no, I get it.
I would say when you talk about if you include LT Overton, Quay Russo might not be Alabama's most complete edge, but if you include Overton with the defensive lineman, Russo has been the most complete edge Wolf player that they have had. He has more coverage snaps, 20 on the season, than he does pass rush opportunities or pass rushing snaps at 19. A lot of fans are like, hey, based off of what we saw against Wisconsin, let this guy hunt a little bit more. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I love the question. Now, my guess in terms of explaining that, is they play more than one Wolf. And on a lot of those hunting opportunities for the quarterback, Jan Pierre's in there and not Quay Russo. And you can argue that Pierre might be the better pure pass rusher. So that might be more by design rather than, hey, we're accidentally taking Quay off the field when we shouldn't. But I am with you. I'm more of and this is kind of one of my pet peeves about the Womack defense, actually. I'm not super critical like some, but I've got my bones to pick, I guess you'd say. I think we play too many players. I said that last year. I was kind of mad about it after Florida State. Thought we just play too many players. I'm come from the Saban school. I like identifying your best player, and that's the guy. And that's the guy. Now, a lot of players can't play 60, 70 snaps, and you have to substitute to a degree, especially on the defensive front. I get that. But to me, who's your best Wolf? To me, it's Quay Russo. Quay Russo is the most complete Wolf. You already said it. Couldn't agree more. He's the best combination pass rusher, edge setter, and a guy that can drop into coverage. I just think he should play more snaps, period. I think they all should. Overton should. Quay should. Your best two inside linebackers, wherever they are. Now, I understand you might have Deontay a little bit on a pitch count because of the knee. I get that. That makes sense. But the DBs, just, hey, if those are your five best, then leave them there and identify your best players in practice and play those guys. That's just kind of how I feel about it. Now I realize that's heavily influenced by 17 years of watching how Nick Saban did it. But it gets back to what you're saying. Do you want to leave Russo in or do you want to take him out? I want to see Russo play more snaps. I do. Third and forever, and they've been doing this some. Let's give Kane Womack, I'll give him a lot of credit here because I complained about it last year and he did change. They're using more personnel packages this year. There are more different substitution personnel packages. Last year they had 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 DBs on the field pretty much every snap. I know they were occasional, but this year, sometimes there's 2 Wolves. Sometimes there's 2 Bandits. Sometimes there's a 4-man front. Sometimes it's a 3-man front. Sometimes there's 6 DB. I don't know that we played 6 DBs more than 5 snaps last year over the whole season. Now they're playing 6 DBs kind of consistently at times. And I give Kane Womack a lot of credit for, I think that's just kind of how it needs to be done. So I'd say leave Russo out there. And then when it's 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 10 plus, I want Russo and Jan Pierre out there. That's just kind of how I do it.
So here's what's kind of happening. Number one, you're 100% correct. In those obvious passing situations for opposing offenses, they're taking Russo off the field. They're putting the dime package onto the field, but they're substituting Jan Pierre. So you've got Jan, you've got one true interior defensive lineman. You've got LT Overton, who's kind of playing out there on the other edge. And then you've got Deontay Lawson, who's kind of sometimes he'll line up on the line of scrimmage. Sometimes he'll play kind of that shallow off-ball look where, and in those instances, he's typically quarterback spying. Now, what I like about that is they're putting Yanze and they're using his speed as much as possible. They're putting him in a really wide 9, and they're having him crash hard off of the edge. Then they're allowing LT Overton to attack inside. Like you saw this against Wisconsin. It just so happens that you have Yanze coming off of one side. You have LT Overton crashing an inside gap to the opposite side. And what they're hoping to do is that quarterback fills that, whether it be coming from his left on the inside gap or on the right crashing off the edge. he goes to bail to the opposite side, and you actually saw Deontay Lawson waiting and anticipating him bailing out to that side that they're trying to force him to. It just so happens that the quarterback instead stepped up into that B gap to the side that Yanze Pierre was crashing hard off of, and he tried to run that way. But it made it look like Deontay Lawson was going in the complete opposite direction that he should have. But I think that was by design. They were trying to flush him out to that side. I like that because Yanze Pierre's speed really helps. But that's one element where in those obvious passing situations, Pierre is coming onto the field to play that wolf. There's also when Pierre and Rousseau are both on the field together, which is happening a lot against 12 personnel, where they're going more 3-4 looks. Quay Rousseau is playing that Sam linebacker to the field side while Yanze is coming and replacing him as the boundary edge. That means that the strong side linebacker is typically going to be dropping into coverage more. And so when you have either one guy, Yanze or Rousseau having a drop, normally it's Rousseau, who is a lot more comfortable doing that. Is he comfortable doing it? No, but this was a guy that we thought could end up playing off-ball linebacker on the college level, and he actually saw some snaps there in high school. So he's a lot more comfortable playing off the ball. They don't mind lining him up in the apex. That's another element of this. So it's like one of those things where, okay, I don't know how you need to I understand that, like, hey, if you're going to have one of your edges dropping, you want the one who's more comfortable doing that. But you're not going to have LT Overton doing it, obviously, when he's in the field with Rousseau. But Rousseau you need to figure out a creative way to give Rousseau more pass rushing opportunities, because I think this dude's got some juice. He's dropped some weight. He looks explosive. Give him the chance to get after the quarterback, figure out a way to make that happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, he specifically dropped the weight and talked about a goal the entire offseason was improving his pass rush. That's his path to playing on Sunday, that's what's got to improve. You got to be better at that. But hey, he does play a position. I mean, you describe it where, I mean, Quay is being asked to, okay, sometimes you rush the passer, sometimes you're setting the edge, sometimes you're dropping into coverage. What a big ask of any one defender. I mean, you're asking him to, hey, sometimes be a defensive lineman, sometimes be a linebacker, sometimes be a safety. You're asking him to do all those things. But where does he have to improve the most? To me, it is as a pass rusher. But we don't know that he's improved unless you give him those pass rush reps. And by the way, I firmly believe this. I bet you do too, Clint. You can practice it all you want, but the experience you gain that makes you a better player is experience that comes in the games. That's where he will become a better pass rusher, because he's getting reps in the games, not just reps on the practice field. So I do want to see Quay get after the passer more often. And, they ask him to do so much. I'm sure he's even thinking about the NFL already and stuff, because we know he's draft eligible, but they ask him to do so much, and you can be so valuable in the NFL if you excel in all three areas. I think he's really a guy that would benefit by a fourth, even a fifth year of college football, because boy, you could show up experienced and kind of having that large skill set, which would help you fit into any system. So I want more responsibility on Quay, more snaps for Quay, but Quay's got to do something with it. I mean, more what we saw last week when he got his sack against Wisconsin. I think he had 1 or 0 or 2 maybe sacks last year. It was less than 2. I know that, and was Alabama's starter at the position really for most of the year. It doesn't mean he played a ton of snaps. Again, he shares that spot with so many guys. But I'm with you. I would like to see Quay play more snaps. I think this is a great game for it. And I think he could be a real key to victory, because, again, Alabama's path to victory on the defensive side of the ball is the pressure on Stockton. Don't let Stockton have the game he had against Tennessee. You got to apply more pressure to him than even Tennessee did, and that's the path. There's no other path. That's it. That's goal number one. Get Georgia off of plan A and into plan B, because you're applying heat to the quarterback.
Well, Rousseau has 19 pass rushing snaps. Deontay Lawson has 17. I think that's where, now granted, it's like I said, in those obvious passing situations, sometimes Lawson is lining up on the line of scrimmage and he's that fourth player. Sometimes he's playing more of a spy. I would personally, and I understand that you're taking another you know, you're taking a true off-ball field general type off of the field. I don't know if you want to do that as far as taking Lawson off the field, but I do think that having a player like Russaw who has the closing speed more, probably, yeah, definitely more so than even Deontay Lawson, but it can also handle or be more effective when you are allowing him to line up on the line of scrimmage. Maybe it's taking Lawson off the field and having Russaw play as that fourth guy because he does have that off-ball experience. He's not super comfortable as far as the communicating and navigating and everything else as far as playing off the ball and seeing the big picture on this level. There would be some deficiencies, but if it's very niche or very specific situations that you're doing it, I mean, maybe that would be a potential solution. But at the same time, I just know that defensive coordinators really don't want to take that field general, that green dot player, the communicator off the field in really any situation, which is kind of why that Lawson has to stay on the field pretty much. I mean, I know he's not staying on the field for every snap because you're seeing a lot of Nikai Hill-Green coming in for both him and for Justin Jefferson, kind of a platoon with the three or a three-man rotation, I guess you'd say. But I do think that you've got to get creative because Russaw's too impactful of a pass rusher to have, only 6 or 7 pass rushing snaps per game. Especially in this game. Like, I think Yanze Pierre can cause some problems off of that, I guess the left side for Alabama's defense, but right side of Georgia's offensive line. I think it doesn't matter if it's LT, if it's Quay, if it's Yanze. I think that Alabama's got the dudes more so than Tennessee, in my opinion, to really apply pressure. And we all know how that looks. Doesn't matter what the rest of your offensive line looks like. 2021 Alabama with Chris Owens at right tackle. They looked pretty good everywhere else, but that right tackle was a major problem area, and it was a leakage spot where you could go into a game saying, we're going to be able to apply consistent pressure on the quarterback from this spot pretty much every time. Especially if Ernest Green is a lot closer to being 100% and he can handle being the full-time guy, I think they're in a better place. But, if that continues to be a problem, Alabama can really take advantage of that to a point where Georgia has to start altering everything. It's getting Gunner Stockton moving out to the opposite side to the left. You can start compensating for that if you're Alabama. Like, this can really become a problem area for Georgia if they don't get improved play there on the right side.
And during this off week, that's your time to self-scout. A lot of fans assume that during that off week, wow, this is great. You get extra time for Georgia. That's actually not the most beneficial way to spend the off week. I think the most beneficial way to spend the off week is self-scouting. What does Alabama need to do to improve? And again, that snap count, that snap share you're talking about where, we have Lawson getting after the quarterback too much and Russaw not enough. That's the sort of things that you discover in the self-scouting process that you can change going forward. How we're substituting, what down and distances, what players are grading out what based on down and distance. You can get super deep into the weeds to figure out what's your best pitch. I say it all the time. Don't get beat on your second best pitch. And Lawson's not the best pass rusher on the team. He's not as good a pass rusher as Quay Russaw is. And maybe Russaw's not the pass rusher that Yanze Pierre is. So the smart thing to do is pick your spots with Lawson, have Russaw maybe be the primary guy, but have Pierre in on those specialty downs, because where I think Yanze Pierre struggles a bit is those things Quay does really well. The setting the edge part, the drop it into coverage, which is probably a big liability for Pierre, who was really nothing but a pass rushing defensive end at Eufaula High School. I mean, it was a new universe for him about learning how to do things that safeties do. But Quay Russaw manages to do that pretty well. So really that part is about putting the players in the best position to be successful. And I think with those numbers that you cited, it's Lawson coming after the quarterback too much. It's Russaw not going after the quarterback enough. And when are you using Yanze Pierre and when? Those are all vital things to figure out during that off week. And you can bet Alabama spent a lot of time looking at those numbers, looking at that tape, and figuring out ways to improve Alabama. You can start working on Georgia on Sunday. They're not complicated. It's not playing a service academy where you do need extra time because what they're doing is so different than what everyone else does. Georgia plays it pretty straight up. Bobo's not a gimmick guy. They don't do things that you're never going to see again the rest of the year. Heck, they'll do a lot of things Wisconsin did. So you can prepare for Georgia with the normal practice week. You needed that extra time to work on you.
One of the things, and you are going to see a lot of Russaw, you're going to see a lot of Yanze, in my opinion, because of the injury to Jamarian Latham, which we definitely need to bring up. That's obviously serious as far as the ambulance, and him having to go to the hospital, but they're saying he's got full motion, and that's great news. This was a guy who was already out for Alabama and had been out since the Florida State game. He had went out against Florida State. So with him, obviously, with this type of injury, I mean, I wouldn't expect him to play this weekend, right? So you're probably going to see a lot of Jan Zapier. You're going to see a lot of Quay Russaw. Why? Because Georgia runs a lot of 2 tight end, 12 personnel packages. And in those instances, unless they're playing Vanderbilt, which was another thing, by the way, that was one of the things for the tall tale signs to me that they didn't take Vanderbilt seriously last year, is that they were going against 12 personnel. In fact, they were going against very heavy run packages, and they were playing a base 4-2-5 defense the entire game. I didn't notice them do that against anybody else that was running those types of packages, or even 12 personnel, maybe on certain snaps, but for the most part, they would match personnel. I think they thought they were just going to line up and beat Vanderbilt regardless of what they were putting out there. They paid dearly for it. But that's something that was an outlier as far as how they respond. They typically, especially now, they're responding to the opposing offense's personnel that they're putting out there. They're putting the right dudes out there. So you're probably going to see a lot of 3-4 types of looks where you got the 2 off-ball linebackers, you got the 2-3-4 edges, you got the 3 interior defensive linemen. You're going to kick LT Overton inside and play him as a 3-4 defensive end. And it's a matter of, what do they do with those snaps? Now, granted, like I said, when they are bringing in Jan Zapier as that second wolf on the field, they're moving Quay Russaw to the field side. That's typically your strong side defensive end. That's LT Overton, and Russaw, the wolf, is playing to the boundary. And when he goes to the strong side, he's playing that strong side linebacker, and that's going to require him to drop more often than your weak side guy. So that's something to keep in mind. This doesn't automatically mean that Russaw is going to get more pass rushing opportunities necessarily, but I do think that the major thing for me is do what you need to do. Georgia, they're playing at home, so you wouldn't expect like false starts and things like that to be a massive issue. You've got to earn the right to even think about those packages, because we're over talking about it like it's, you're probably guaranteed to see it at least a couple of times a game. But if you want to see it more often, you've got to put them in those down in distances. And then you can worry about that. Georgia's doing a very good job right now of staying on schedule, or trying to make everything as easy on Gunner Stockton as possible. You've got to be able to counter that if you're Alabama.
One of my favorite lines from an Alabama OC is way before Clint's time. He's so young. But 1989, Homer Smith, one of the great minds that's ever been an OC at Alabama. I remember one thing he said that stuck with me my whole life is he said, third down conversion rate for a defense is the most overrated stat, because the most underrated stat is yards on first down. Because show me a team that consistently has the offense in 3rd and 10, they have an excellent third down conversion rate. But if the other team's in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, and the defense is in conflict, then you're going to be giving up a lot of those third downs. It's about yards on first down or even second down, but yards early. I think Georgia wants to establish a run game. See, Georgia is about balance. I don't know that Alabama is so much, and I don't mean that as a insult. I'm just saying Georgia wants to run the ball with Nate Frazier a lot, and their other backs. They want to run the ball. That's why they're in 12 personnel. I mean, when you're in 12 personnel, you're announcing to the world, we want to run the football. And Georgia wants to run the ball. How Alabama handles those first down runs, and welcome back Tim Keenan, who I think is going to be pretty big on those first downs, not allowing Nate Frazier or short Georgia passes to gain a lot of yardage. Like Clint said, earn those multiple DB packages, earn putting the dime on the field, which you're going to do when it's 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. That's going to be success on the early downs against the run. A lot of criticism out there. Alabama doesn't defend the run well. Well, I agree. I agree. I'm not disagreeing with that. But two things about that. Number one, I think Alabama has really struggled to defend the run against a lot of zone read stuff and RPO type stuff and highly athletic quarterbacks who are almost run first guys. They've really struggled with that. I agree. But the teams that play more straight up, that use the running back similar to how NFL teams use their running backs on Sundays, I think Alabama's been fairly good against the run, against that type of offense. And secondly, you have to remember that even though some of the numbers last year were alarming and some of the results weren't great, Alabama did end the season a top 10 defense. I mean, by most of the metrics that I think really matter, Alabama was a top 10 defense at the end of last season. So if you think they're bad against the run, you can't be terrible against the run and be a top 10 defense, and they were. So I think some of the criticism, as usual, is overblown. But Saturday, you've got to stop the run, and you got to stop it on first down so we can get those extra pass rushers and get that heat on Stockton. I think it's harder to get, when they're in 12 personnel and we're matching what they're doing, it's hard to get heat on the quarterback because you're so big, you're so run focused. That's where a Quay Russaw can really make some hay, I think, because he's going to be out there. When they're in 12 personnel, you can bet Quay Russaw's on the field. Well, Quay, sometimes in 12 personnel, they're going to throw the ball, and you might have a pass rush opportunity, perhaps. That he could really make a play there. But I really believe yards on first down for Georgia, particularly when they're just running the ball with Nate Frazier, it's huge. The first time on 1st and 10 when they hand it to Nate Frazier, I'm dying to see what happens. If it's 5 and 6 yard gain, I'm going to go uh-oh. But if it's a 2 yard gain or less, I'm going to go. I think Alabama can be in this thing.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what Georgia does as far as like if Alabama goes with that 3-4 personnel. How much do they run at Jan Zapier? Because there will be certain instances, a lot of times, the default would be, okay, you put Jamarian Latham and you put Quay Russaw out there. If you're facing a run-heavy team, Georgia's not run-heavy. They're very balanced. But I'm saying the fact that they want to get big and want to run the football, if you see Jan Zapier out there to the boundary, how often are they running to the boundary and trying to run at him and see what he can do? Now, granted, a lot of that, we'll just have to wait and see because it's not. It might not, really. I would need to go back and check. Is it boundary filled or is it, when they're lining up in that 12 personnel? Is it more of okay? Where's the tight ends? If they're overloaded to one side, is that where Russaw's at? Maybe that would be to the boundary if they're lining up in a formation to the boundary. I'd have to go back and look. But either way, my point is that they're trying to put Jan Zapier in a position where he's got the path of least resistance to whether it's stopping the run or getting after the quarterback because his speed is his asset. Russaw, in my opinion, is the more complete pass rusher. He can convert speed to power. He's still twitched up. He can turn the corner on you. But Janze's speed and burst is rare. And so I think that's why they love lining him up in that wide 9 and just having him crash as hard as he is because they want the quarterback feeling that to try to, flush him out to the other side where they're anticipating it. But that's just something to keep an eye on if you're an Alabama fan. Another thing that we need to be talking about, and it's an advantage, I think, for Alabama. First of all, the way Tennessee played Georgia defensively in that game, I thought was interesting based off of not having their 2 starting cornerbacks available. Alabama's secondary was supposed to be a strength going into this season. I think that, really outside of putting a true freshman on Squirrel White early in that game against Florida State, teams haven't really thrown it a ton or thrown it all over Alabama's secondary. I think the safeties are playing really well, and the corners just haven't really been tested a whole lot. So maybe we find out, we thought it was a strength. It's not. I still view it as a strength. That's something as far as Gunner Stockton and having to deal with a secondary that's going to be able, like the receivers, we still got questions for Georgia. We think they've upgraded the talent. We think they've got some ability. But they have yet to do it against this type of secondary. And if Alabama can really blanket and cause issues for Georgia's receivers where they have to continue to kind of funnel their passing game through their tight ends, which you're also going to have safeties covering those guys and off-ball linebackers, and we kind of like some of those matchups pretty well, then, you can really put some strain on Georgia where it's like we can't do in the passing game what we want to. Maybe you can commit a little bit more to stopping the run because you can trust your secondary to hold up against their weapons in the passing game. If you can do that, that I think is a pretty significant difference, at least on paper, between what Tennessee was bringing to the table a couple of weeks ago versus Alabama's defense on Saturday.
Alabama secondary, like you said, a great example, the disaster game against Florida State. The worst DB play was the true freshman who again should have been out there so early in the game on Squirrel White and giving up the big pass. But other than that, it's kind of hard to think back to Damani getting beat, Zabian getting beat. I mean, it's happened, but so rarely. I mean, that's a huge difference in this game is Tennessee had to corners and Alabama's got Damani Jackson, Zabian Brown out there. That much different situation for Alabama against the Georgia pass game. And Damani, to me, is about the most interesting player on the defense because I think when you ask yourself, how good is Alabama's defense? It starts with, that kind of like a mysterious sounding question. How good is Damani Jackson? I don't even know because he's not in these NFL mock drafts as if that really matters, but he's not, you don't really see him there. But I wonder what the knock is because it's certainly not his size. He's got premium size. He's going to run a 4.3. He's the fastest high school athlete in like California high school history. He's going to run a 4.3. But in the games, well, he must be, so he's a size speed guy, but he's not a player. Well, he doesn't get beat. He's not giving up a lot. He doesn't even give up a lot of pass reception. He doesn't give up a lot of 2nd and 6s, much less touchdowns. It seems to me that Damani's good, yet you don't see him on all-star lists. You don't see him in these mock drafts. It's like, to me, he's a big mystery. I wonder if this is the game where they're going to test him a lot. He just doesn't get tested much. Maybe this is the game where we see a team going at number 1 a lot. We see him going at number 2 here and there because of his youth. He's younger, and I think Zabian gets sort of attacked more than Damani, but not a lot more. And when he does, he doesn't give up a lot. I mean, I think this is a tremendous advantage for Alabama. I mean, they're better corners than what Tennessee was putting on the field. And I think they're really good players. They might not be playmakers in the sense that they're going to end up with 5, 6, 7 picks, but they don't give up much. Hubbard's a playmaker in the middle of the field. Sabb is certainly consistent. He certainly knows where to be. I think he's in the right place a lot. Deshaun Jones has been really quiet at Husky, but it's hard to believe that he's going to be quiet Saturday just because I think he's going to see so much action, both against the run and the pass. But, boy, the secondary has a chance to really prove how good they are because I think what they do Saturday will be compared to what Tennessee did. And I like Alabama's personnel better than the personnel that Tennessee was putting on the field last week.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's not even close. And it's, I don't know how much that game would have changed had Tennessee had those guys available, but I think it was an advantage. Like, I think for Alabama, you're looking opposite Everett at corner, and you're saying that's the spot we can get, and we can get pretty consistently. Where's Georgia looking at Alabama's secondary and really seeing anything like that? That's the thing kind of going in. And, Damani Jackson, I think he's a potential first-round talent, but second-round talent. I think the injury, the rib injury late last year, he kind of played a little soft against Michigan in the bowl game. I think maybe some of that carried over to early this season. Didn't play as physical as I was hoping, against Florida State. But really since then, and I think he's been fine. Hadn't really been tested. But one of the things is an offense will tell you which cornerback they respect more for sure. Because I remember, what was it, 2022, I believe, where Kool-Aid there for a while. It was Kool-Aid. It was Tyrion Arnold opposite Kool-Aid. And this was before Tyrion Arnold became Tyrion Arnold. He was a problem that first year as a starter. Revolving door there at that corner. When Kyrie Jackson would come in opposite Kool-Aid, they'd go at Kyrie Jackson. When Tyrion Arnold was on the field, they'd go at Tyrion Arnold. You want to know how I knew Eli Ricks should be the one that was on the field? Because when Eli Ricks came on the field, they started going at Kool-Aid McKinstry a lot more. they tried to avoid Eli Ricks as that season progressed and he started getting more comfortable in Alabama's system. Like he became the bigger problem. Alabama had two problems. Now, granted, there still was a revolving door. It wasn't like Eli Ricks completely locked up that job. Really think he should have come back. I know that there was some issues off the field that contributed and all that, but it's like, but the opposing offenses would tell you, hey, we want no part of Kool-Aid if we've got this other option over here. But if you got a respectable guy over there, okay, we'll start balancing it out a little bit. We'll start trying to go at both because we don't look at one guy and say we've got him. I think that's an advantage for Alabama's offense going into this game relative to Georgia's, because I don't think you're looking anywhere in the secondary and saying we got him. Like even like Zachariah Branch in the slot, like Deshaun Jones is a former perimeter corner. He's used to going against speed and elusiveness and short area quickness and all those things. He's physical. He can be gotten there in the slot a little bit when it comes to short area quickness and stuff, but I'm saying he's got experience covering athletes in the past. That's one benefit. You might sacrifice a little bit as far as the physicality, but that's one benefit of having a perimeter corner as your slot guy, is that he's got some experience doing that. I just think that I'm not guaranteeing that Alabama's like going to shut down Georgia's passing offense or anything. I'm just saying they can try to make life a little difficult, but it won't matter as much if you're not having the early down success, because, you know, Georgia can just continue to run the football and dictate pace. And, you know, the play action is a lot more when it's 2nd and 1. Play action shot is a lot easier to do than when it's 2nd and 11. So it's like, you know, this is where like I can see Alabama having an advantage in this game, but it all is going to be dictated based off of that early down success.
When Georgia looks at Alabama's film, I mean, of course, they're smarter guys than I'll ever be. But when they look at Alabama's film, Clint, I'm guessing they're going to see. I don't know that we can attack number one. I don't know that we can attack number two. I mean, those are really good football players, and going over the top. I don't know that Stockton is that type of guy. And by the way, he had some good throws against Tennessee, but overall his numbers going deep down the field aren't very good. And plus you're attacking Keon Sabb. Normally you do that, maybe Hubbard. But this is where I think Georgia feels they can make something happen. And that is getting the Husky and the linebackers involved in pass coverage. And you do that by throwing a lot of balls to the tight ends and the shallow and intermediate middle and the slot receiver. And I think Georgia's going to go heavy there. I think they feel like they're going to win those matchups. So I think Alabama fans ought to expect to see a lot of throws, more than normal, going to Delp and Lawson, and even maybe London Humphrey, you know, in the slot, or whoever they've got lined up in the slot. They even move Branch around. They move guys around, of course. But I think they're going to attack, and they're going to go with a lot of throws to those tight ends, because they're going to feel like they can win those matchups more often than they're going to win matchups outside the numbers against Damani and Zabian, or over the top over Keon. I think they keep it to the short middle and intermediate middle with maybe with Humphrey, with Delp, and with Lawson Lucky, who I always want to call Lucky Lawson, which would be a great name for a Cowboy.
I mean, when you look at the target share, I mean, it's, you know, Zachariah Branch has 15, so does Colby Young. Dylan Bell has 10. London Humphreys has 9.
Dylan Bell's another matchup issue, by the way, for those linebackers. You get Dylan Bell matched up on linebacker, it's a problem. They'll move him around a lot.
Kind of. I wouldn't say he's, you know, Jeremy Bernard, but he plays that Z, that move position, get him in motion, kind of try to create some mismatches. Kind of has a more, not a running back build, but a more physical build, 6'1", 210-ish, if I'm not mistaken. Has a little bit of Jeremy Bernard in him. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But Lawson Lucky and Oscar Delp, they have a combined 10 targets in 3 games.
Yeah,
and
they might have 10 Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, this offense, in a lot of ways, it was kind of funneled through the tight ends for so long. Neither one of these two guys are Brock Bowers. I mean, anybody that has Brock Bowers in their offense, the passing game is going to be funneled through him. So but I mean, really, it goes beyond that. It wasn't like it was just when Brock Bowers was there. They've kind of always tried to feature that position, and really, they've featured multiple players at that position. Darnell Washington got featured a lot in a lot of, especially in certain situations down there in the goal line. Now, when you're 6'8", and you've got the athleticism to go up and get it, yeah, you take advantage of that. But I do think that you're onto something. Zachariah Branch will be a guy that they continue to target pretty often. But I could see Lawson Lucky and Oscar Delp. Delp's only got 3 targets through 3 games. I think he had 2 against Marshall, none against Austin Peay, and then 1 this past week, or their last game against Tennessee. That I wouldn't be shocked if you saw them more featured on Saturday, because I do agree. Now, they'll take some shots downfield. This isn't going to be like, they're not going into this game scared of Alabama. I want people to understand that. I'm just saying that I don't think you're looking at any one position and saying this is where we build everything around as far as our passing game, because that's very gettable very consistently. It's, hey, we're going to have a lot of different guys make plays. We're going to have to spread it around and do different things. But, Zabian Brown, late double move against Wisconsin, how he recovered on that and was able to get the pass breakup, nothing short of remarkable. I mean, I tweeted it out as soon as I saw it. I mean, I don't know how he recovered there, but like he can get beat deep. He got beat deep some last year. He got beat deep there. It was kind of an underthrow that certainly hurt Wisconsin, but give Zabian Brown a lot of credit just for putting himself back in that position, because he's constantly battling. And, so I'll be curious to see what that ends up looking like. But if Georgia, worst case, if you're Georgia, is if you can consistently run the football, you can control tempo. If Alabama's having some success against your defense, you can really start to play ball control. Now, this offense isn't designed to be ball control. That's not what they want to do. I think they can do it, though, which is a key difference. I don't think Alabama can right now. If Alabama gets a lead, or Georgia's offense is just torching the defense, I don't think Alabama's offense has the ability to go out there and have long, sustaining drives where you're running the football and stuff. And, hey, let's give the defense a break. Let's go out here and put 6 or 7 minutes, take it off the clock, and score a touchdown. I would be a lot more confident in Georgia being able to do that than Alabama. So if you're Alabama, try to do what you can as far as taking away Georgia's run game, because I think if you really start to force it to be more of a passing game, I think that favors Alabama heavily right now. Despite the fact that I love Gunner Stockton, I love the upgrades that they've had at wide receiver. Think they got some weapons. I still think Alabama has a significant advantage as far as the weapons in the passing game. Despite the hostile environment, I still like Ty Simpson. Not over Gunner Stockton necessarily, but I'm saying because of the crowd. But I would say that he's a guy who you can trust in those situations. If this turns into any sort of shootout or both teams having to throw the football around, which I don't really foresee, but if Alabama can somehow make that happen, I think that favors Alabama for sure.
Man, I could not agree more. It's a weird thing to say that you hope the game is in the 40s, because boy, what an epic fail for Alabama's defense if that that'll be something for us to panic about after the game. But I couldn't agree more. If both teams are in the 40s, I really like Alabama's chances here. If both teams can't get out of the 20s, both of them, I'm going to worry a little bit. That's favors Georgia. In the 30s, kind of anybody's game. But if it's a track meet, I like Alabama, because I think Alabama's got more weapons. And when you've got Ryan Williams, who could have a 3-touchdown game, when you got Jernard, who could have a 3-touchdown game, when you're probably waiting on a breakout from Isaiah Horton, that could happen any game. I think we all know he's got more in the tank than what we've seen so far from him. Lazir Brooks is a play waiting to happen. And then you also have throws to the backs. I think it's incumbent upon both teams. And again, my theme all week, mirror image. A path to success for both teams is spreading the ball around. Ty's got to complete passes to the backs. He's got to complete balls to Josh Cuevas. He's got to complete balls to 4, 5, even 6 different receivers. If you're doing that, Alabama's very difficult to defend, but Georgia the same way. If Gunner Stockton is spreading the ball around and they're getting production from Nate Frazier, boy, those numbers start adding up, and then you have to keep up. But I agree 100% with what you said. Almost the type of game where I'm going to feel like Alabama is advantaged is an up and down track meet and a game that sort of looks like what we saw in Knoxville.
Well, I mean, and I think receivers are definitely one of the biggest advantages for Alabama in that instance. But I think right there behind it, maybe even ahead of it, would be I would trust Ryan Grubb in that instance a lot more than Mike Bobo. I feel
Yeah.
like Ryan Grubb would be a lot more comfortable in that type of game than Mike Bobo. I'm not saying that Ryan Grubb, he doesn't mind slinging the football around if he has to. But once again, I don't necessarily foresee that, just because I do think that I'm hoping that Tim Keenan is immediately the rock that he's always been, because if he is, and he can handle a pretty decent workload, I think London Simmons is playing pretty good football right now. I think that you kind of cut down on the number of snaps, because I think from a conditioning standpoint, pretty good condition. Not saying, but I just think that if you limit his snaps, he'll be that much more effective. Move Isaiah Faga to more of a situational role as that third nose. Might not even see him much in this type of game if Tim Keenan can handle any sort of significant workload. But if Keenan's a dude, between him and LT Overton and Quay Rusall being able to set the edge, once again, those 3-4 looks, I will be keeping a close eye on Yanze Pierre to see how they try to attack him. But I do think that Alabama can have some success stopping the run if Tim Keenan is a dude. But it's just a matter of if Georgia can consistently establish a run game, that how does that's going to put Alabama in some tough positions. And really, there's so many different ways that this could end up working out based off of who's available, how healthy are they, what's Georgia able to do, what's Alabama able to do. Obviously, that's how any game works out. But there's just you look at this and you say, okay, I can see a scenario where Alabama stops the run pretty well. And then if they put it on Gunner Stockton, I could see Alabama's secondary being able to shut them down enough. I would love for Alabama to get an early lead, especially if they could get like an early, 2-score lead, 10 points, 14 points, because then the pressure really gets put on Gunner Stockton. They got to start kind of throwing the football around a little bit. And, I think that would bode well for Alabama. But I can also see a scenario where Georgia's able to completely control tempo of the game, and they're able to, if they need to score quick, it's a 2-minute drill before the half. I could see them having some success doing that, or I could see them controlling if they really need to get their defense a break. Defense was just out there for a while. I could see that going either way. So that's really interesting. Last question, asked it for the offense. Now I'll ask it for the defense. Who is a sneaky, underrated X factor for Alabama's defense in this football game? Now, if you want to take it in a different direction and just say a big name player, the biggest X factor, that's totally fine. I'll probably go more sneaky play, but you go ahead with, either way, X factor in this football game.
Two names. One is I do think a lot of the action for Alabama's defense is going to take place in the middle of the field. So Bray Hubbard's Alabama's best player in the middle of the field, or he has been at times. I think it's incumbent that Bray Hubbard have a really good game and be very active and be a great tackler. Not necessarily we need another 2-interception game. That'd be great, by the way, but be very active and be a good tackler and good in coverage, because so much of the action I think is going to take place with those tight ends and with slot receivers in the middle of the field. So Bray has to play well. But an X factor for me is a guy we haven't even mentioned yet, and this would be an excellent time for a breakout performance from James Smith. I think he's got some opportunities here. I don't think Georgia's offensive line is vintage Georgia. And I know James has an NFL future and wants to play in the NFL and has NFL talent. All 32 teams are watching. All 32 teams will be in the building, and everybody else watching at home. And this is a tape they're all going to watch. This is, your tape is your resume. In this game, in this sport, your tape is your resume. This tape will stand out above all others. You want to play pro football? Saturday is your day to prove that you can play with the big boys on Sunday. But you're going to have to make plays against Georgia to prove you're good enough. Because if you get shown up Saturday, if you don't play well, if you get beat, they're going to see that too. Because that's who you're going to play against on Sundays, guys like Georgia's got. So I like James Smith in sort of a breakout performance. He's shown flashes at times already this year. I do think he's a year better than he was, but be a lot better and sort of make a name for yourself on Saturday. So I'll go with James Smith as an X factor, but Bray Hubbard has to play well, or it could be a long night for Alabama.
Yeah, I'm right there with you as far as James Smith. I think he's so critical in this game. I think Tim Keenan being back, if they get the run stopper that James Smith is capable of being, And Tim Keenan, even if it's in more of a limited role, can really provide some strong snaps as far as being that anchor at nose. You at least can maybe shut down what Georgia's doing tackle to tackle, and then you can really start crashing and getting guys downhill as far as your safeties and stuff on the perimeter. And you've got to be able to, it's like Kane Womack said, you've got to be able to tackle out in space. That's the name of the game now. But, the tackle to tackle stuff is still pretty important. And so, because you went with James Smith, which is, I think a phenomenal answer, a guy that I think is playing much better football, Deontay Lawson's moving a lot better. I do think that the loss weight and the fact that he is now getting healthier the further he gets away from that devastating knee injury, he's starting to play like old Deontay Lawson. I think that's beneficial for Alabama. But as far as my sneaky X factor play, I'm actually going to go with Nikhai Hill-Green because of his ability with the run fits and stopping the run consistently, and the fact that in coverage he can be a liability, and I don't think he's going to be like any sort of full-time player. But if he can bring it against the run, and especially when he's out there, if he can create some issues for Georgia on early downs, then maybe some of those things that we're talking about as far as setting up the passing situations, pin your ears back, get after Gunner Stockton. I think he could be a sneaky guy as far as what he brings to the table, what Georgia does well, and what they want to do as far as running the football. He could end up having a bigger impact than people realize. Justin Jefferson could end up having a huge game here. I think he's been, he's been good, really good in coverage, definitely a heat-seeking missile. When he sees it, he goes and gets it, he hunts it. But as far as disengaging from blockers, I think Lawson's doing pretty well with that. I think Nikhai Hill-Green's doing a pretty good job with it. Justin Jefferson's still a little bit undersized. That's still going to cause him some issues sometimes. So against this style of offense, I do think you're going to see a lot of Justin Jefferson. But, if he ends up having a big game, I think of the three linebackers, he would probably be the most surprising. That's why I'm going to go with Nikhai Hill-Green, and hopefully in a limited role, he can be a sneaky X factor as far as setting up some of those obvious passing situations.
No coincidence that between the two of us, we named a bunch of guys, but we named a bunch of guys that play in the middle of the field.
That's a great point. And that's because we understand how important it is for Alabama. You got to do something, because like you said, Georgia can kind of make you cover all of it, and you've got to start slowly taking things away from them and making them more one-dimensional one way or another. I think if you can make them one-dimensional as far as the pass, I think that really bodes well for you, because I think your secondary can hold up. If you can't, I think you got to do whatever you need to do to stop their run, I guess is my point. If you've got to bring extra bodies, which they'll go the single high, they'll go the cover three, bring safety up into the box, add that element, which is, hopefully should be able to help. But you've got to do whatever you need to do to make sure that Georgia's not running the football on you consistently. So, and then, when you talk about Nick Saban, 2022 Tennessee, a lot of people hate the 5-touchdown performance from Jalen Hyatt and everything that he did through the air. But Saban, as a defensive-minded guy, he said, I would rather get beat on that stuff and try to figure that out than death by 1,000 cuts by them being able to run the football consistently on us.
Yeah, you get beat every week. You get beat every week if you lose that way.
Yeah, so, just do what you got to do to stop the run, force as much of the game on a Gunner Stockton's shoulders. I think you'll handle that type of game well. Not saying, he's going to crash and burn, but I just think that's your best bet. Not really because of Gunner Stockton, but because of, even if you're taking away stuff from the passing game, I think you'll be able to hold up pretty well against with your secondary against their weapons in the passing game. So appreciate you hopping on here with me, Jimmy. This has been great conversation. We hope people have enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy it. Like and leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Give us a score prediction. So we're definitely appreciate everybody who's been here and continues to be here. And we will talk to you guys next week.
I may not suit up on Saturdays anymore, but I'm still in the game.
Let's roll.
In here, I call the plays, make adjustments, and lay it on the line. Want to feel that fire, that rush? Then you've got to get in the game. I used to say it in the tunnel, and I still say it now. Let's roll.